you hear the tasty lick, the riff, and it's time for Bleav in Chargers with the great Lorenzo Neal, and I love seeing it, Lo, when I interact with people online and the algorithm spits out kind of what you've been chasing. I feel like there's a lot of Lorenzo Neal for the Hall of Fame stuff finding its way into my timeline, Lo. I love seeing it.
Oh, so do I. I love it. It's a lot of great Chargers on that list, man. Our boy Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers. I mean, Rodney Harrison. So, Hey, join the party.
Exactly right. Join the party. My God, you should be running the party is what you should be doing, Lo, when it comes to the Hall of Fame. With Lorenzo Neal, Matt Money Smith here. It's another week of Bleav in Chargers coming off a 2-game win streak. A big thank you to our friends at FanDuel. They take care of us. They allow us to do this, and we certainly appreciate them for that. If you appreciate it as well, check it out. They've got some odds up, and they're quite favorable this week. Chargers favored by 3 for Sunday Night Football at SoFi Stadium against the Steelers. Steelers coming off a monster victory, the best game they've played all season against the Colts. We'll get into that a little bit later. And also minus 200 right now to make the playoffs. So sitting at 6-3 through 9 games. Obviously, the loss of Alton. I guess we'll just start right there, Lo.
Yeah.
They're 4-0 with him. They're 2-3 without him, and they're going to be without him the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately the Chargers. I mean, when it rains, it pours. I mean, you have 2 Pro Bowl, all prolific tackles, 2 tackles that are, the top tier tackles in the league, and just unfortunately Alt comes back, and now 2-3 weeks later he's back injured, and now it's for the rest of the year. Just tough. It's really tough. It's sad. And the thing about it, they're good guys and they're hardworking guys. It's not guys that are lazy guys. These are guys that don't rest on their laurels. They're constantly trying to get better, and it's horrible. Never seen something like this happen where 2 Pro Bowl, 2 All-Pro tackles are out on the same team.
Yeah, when it happened to Slater in training camp, it was a huge blow and certainly was going to change kind of how they were going to approach the season. But as we pointed out, there were very few teams that were capable of withstanding an injury like that, as well as the Chargers could, because they had Joe Alt that was a left tackle and All-American left tackle at Notre Dame. They could shove him over there, and it worked. They started out 3-0. He gets hurt in their 4th game. They lose that game. And, I watched the playback. I must have watched it back, 50 times. It's it's so frustrating and sad. And just, Pipkins gets beat off the snap by Sebastian Joseph Day, who's not known as a prolific pass rusher. And he's just trying to recover. Herbert's already climbed the pocket. He's already releasing the football. The play is over. And Trey just shoves Sebastian Joseph Day when he's well by him, and it just right into the backside of Alt, who's holding up his block against a very effective Draymond Jones that day, who had kind of pushed him off his spot, and shoved him back quite a bit. And you just saw it happen, and it's like, man, there it is. And you credit the Chargers and Jamari Sawyer and that offensive line for at least, kind of fighting through the end of that, and Justin Herbert especially using his legs. And I'm guessing that's what we're going to probably have to see a lot more of. It's not just going to be this straight back, go through your progressions, deliver the ball. You're probably going to have to move that launch point low and get Herbert on the run a lot more.
You really are. And Herbert can do it, and he's good at it. And you saw the run. I knew the game, even though they sputtered and wasn't like a blowout. When you saw Herbert put his helmet down and run over to talk, it's just like, okay, this guy, What can he do? And you don't like to see that, but that set a tone. That sets a precedent. That's just who he is. So, yes, can they move the launch point and get Herbert outside and do some other things and he can run? Absolutely. But you can't lose Herbert. Here's a guy that plays so hard and he's so tough. And you're in a situation where he's going to have to move and he's going to have to scramble and he's going to have to be creative. But he's shown that he can get out of trouble with his legs and make things happen. He's got to do that. But I want him to start getting down just a little more, pick his spots, when to run, because this is a long season. And you see around the league, they're trying to get these quarterbacks. You see quarterbacks are dropping, getting hurt, injured, all those things. So you just want to hopefully keep this guy healthy.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I think, we talked about it. I think it was after the Colts game and just how the Colts offense had run roughshod over the defense. And we were like, wow, this defense is not what we remember from last year. The missed tackles, and those still showed up against Tennessee a little bit. And I'm sure that it's stuff that Jesse Minter and all of his assistants are working on. But these last 2 weeks, it's kind of shifting back to what we saw last year when it's like, hey, if you can just get to 24, against the Vikings. And I know it was the Vikings and Carson Wentz who after that game had season-ending surgery. And I know it's the Titans, arguably the worst team in football. But you're still talking about last week only giving up 6 points. I know it read 20 on the scoreboard, but it's a punt return touchdown and it's a pick six. Defense only gave up 6. They had a monster goal line stand. There were still some issues in the run game, gave up some explosive runs, and Cam Ward missed some throws. That's for certain. But I look at the last 2 weeks, Low, and I see Thule, 9 pressures, 2 sacks. Khalil Mack, 8 pressures, a sack. Odafe Owe, 7 pressures, 3 sacks. Justin Aboigbe, 6 pressures, 2 sacks. Deion Henley, 3 pressures, 2 sacks. The defense is starting to come back a little bit. This defense is starting to hum.
They are, and you saw them, a little bit better on the run fits. You see them a couple times. You see the running back get out, and of course, the quarterback had a couple big plays down the field at times, caught broken plays, some scramble plays, and made that. But the defense overall is playing a lot better, starting to play Charger type of football. Bend but don't break. Get after it. I think that goal line stance was unbelievable. It's 4th down and 1, and you see guys just flying around the ball. They swarm the ball. Usually guys get stood up at the line, and then the offense line and the cavalry comes and pushes them into the end zone. But you saw the Chargers make that tackle, pulling back at it, make sure it doesn't cross over. You want to see that defense, was just all over, made the young quarterback. You saw him at times running for his life. You see Henley, you see, 52, all these guys, they are taking their turns, putting pressure on the quarterback. This team has the pass rushers. You can get after the quarterback. And it's really refreshing to see this defense get back the type of style of defense we saw last year. But you got to clean up those things, and you can't give up 7 on special teams because you got a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's coming in here, that's riding high, dismantled Indianapolis Colts, played well. Everyone's been on the Steelers talking about how bad that defense, the most expensive defense in the league, and how they've been just a sieve. So these guys, they read press conference, they read press clips as well, and that's what men do. You see around the league, look at those teams that you say should be playing better. The Steelers should be playing better. Who else should be playing? The Ravens should be playing better. And what did those men do? They pulled all the PlayStations, put everything out of the locker room, those little things that said, and Harbaugh didn't have to police them. They did it. See, when you have those type of come to Jesus moments where guys, and they hear enough, they say enough. We're better than that. So it's interesting because it's going to be tough because this Steelers team, Aaron Rodgers, he's quick to release. He's not going to necessarily hold the ball. But this defense, if you hold the ball, someone's coming. Someone is going to get there. It's hard to block these guys up front because they got some motors. So I just want to see this defense continue to play well. If they can continue this, they're still going to compete in spite of having a beat-up offensive line.
Yeah, it's a Pittsburgh defense that had been incredibly disappointing through the first 6-7 weeks of the season. Last 2 weeks, though, you're talking about 4 sacks. You got Kendall Benton's got a sack. TJ Watt's got a sack. Alex Highsmith has 2. Pressure-wise, still not, way up there. Now, look, the Colts have a really good offensive line. Green Bay's got a solid offensive line. I Bleav that's their last 2 games, if I remember right. Yeah, so Green Bay and Indy. But talking about, just when you read the names, Herbig, Highsmith, Watt, Hayward, Benton, it's a handful. It's a handful, and it's a handful for 2 all-pro tackles that you would think would probably still have the edge in Slater and Alt. But now it's a handful for Sawyer and Pipkins. We'll get into the Trevor Penning trade here in a minute. I'm anxious to see kind of what they visualize him at. He was drafted, top 20 as a left tackle out of Northern Iowa, had one of the better Senior Bowls that we've seen in a long time back in 2019. And that's kind of what vaulted him from sort of that group of 5 level school to a first round pick. And it just unfortunately didn't quite pan out for him in New Orleans. But yeah, it's TJ Watt. It's Alex Highsmith. It's Nick Herbig. And like we said, Cam Hayward on the interior. And that's why I'm anxious to see, they got to get Mekhi Becton back, man. He's got to get out on the field. I understand he's a big dude, and that's a lot of weight to carry around on that frame, and that tends to lead to injuries. But man, he's only played 52% of the snaps this year. And you just feel like we talked about what the record is with Alt. Foster Sorrell's fighting his tail off. He's trying to give it a go, but it was a rough go for him against Tennessee, and it really kind of has been a rough go for him. So to get Becton in there, and then maybe it's Penning at left tackle or right tackle, and you're going to give him some help, and kind of I guess just to touch on that real quick, Lo, with the Trevor Penning thing, I was having so many conversations, through social media with a lot of Charger fans. Joe Hortiz, got to do something, man. Don't let us down. And I kept explaining to them, like, offensive linemen don't get traded. You can trade D linemen, you can
Right.
trade edges, you can trade running backs, wide receivers, even corners. Usually it's nickel corners. It's rarely outside corners that get moved. But I was like, that's not a position that you can just pull off a team, a starting tackle. So I give Joe Ortiz credit for getting a starter. Trevor Penning was their starting left guard and had played every game outside of the first. He got injured in that preseason game against the Chargers. But outside of that, he's a dude that, played every game, is a first-round pick. And what I said to everyone was, look what they did with Bobby Hart. Bobby Hart became their starting right tackle, and he was a guy that hadn't started a game since 2021. So I'm not going to put anything past what this group might be able to do with Trevor Penning.
Yeah, I'm shocked that, like you said, that they got him. You look at the Saints, of course, they're out of it, and it's their drafting, trying to get a huge draft class because they're like, look, they're going to build through the draft. It's going through that rebuild. We see where the Saints is going. So they said, okay, let's trade him. But I was shocked, though, that you let a big guy leave your facility, especially you're talking about, and that goes to show you what do they think about their quarterbacks. So because that's a quarterback, the offensive lineman is the quarterback's best friend. And you're trading away one of your starters as a quarterback. You're saying, okay, so what are you doing to me? So it's kudos to this organization and say, hey, we're not throwing in the towel. We're going to continue to fight, and we're going to continue to compete. You look at the Chargers, and you see what the Denver Broncos are doing. And you watch Kansas City, they're heating up. The Raiders, they're in a real boom era. But you have two teams that are surging. The Denver Broncos, you look at the way that they're playing, they're survivors. They're playing, they're finding a way to finish, and it's building a better team. You look at Kansas City, they're moving, and the Chargers are moving too. And the Chargers are moving in spite of all the injuries, bugs that's hitting this team. It's still standing. So now it's going to be interesting, like you said, how they plug Penny. How do you play him? Or guard, set, tackle? They know, this Chargers team know that you could not just go into the remaining of this year and thinking you can win games without having a couple guys up front. You can't just have, okay, I'm going to plug and play these guys. It's too hard in the National Football League. That's why you and I are talking about guys just don't let tackles and interior linemen go because it's too hard to find them. So, kudos to Joe Ortiz and Harbaugh for making something happen to go out and find a starter, because you're going to need him. You're going to need him in this conference.
And again, look, it's a tough situation to be dropped right into the middle of against the Steelers. If you're playing tackle, you're going up against Highsmith or Watt. If you're playing guard, you're going up against Cam Hayward or Keanu Benton. And I went through all of his pressures from this year. He's got 18, which is quite a bit for an interior lineman he only played 6 games. So, but I kind of went through them. I'm going to scrap. I'd say I'd scrap 3 of them. One, he got the tackle got beat, and his guy just bumped right into him, and that's what moved him off his guy that led to the pressure. Another, sometimes the pressures that they list aren't quite. It's like you can see where the play is going, and he just redirected his guy on a rollout, and he eventually caught up to a quarterback that was holding onto the ball too long. But point being, 4 of them were against Dexter Lawrence, and he's just the freak of freaks in the league as an interior lineman. So if you take 18, I'm going to, maybe cut those 4 in half, because you're not going to see very many Dexter Lawrences out there. And then I'll knock off 2 others, and okay, that's serviceable. Now we're at maybe 11-ish, and we're talking maybe 2 to 3 per game is maybe we're at 2 pressures per game from the interior, maybe 3 against a really good interior lineman. Then you start to feel a little bit better about that, especially if, and that's kind of what's interesting is if Becton's back. Is Penning your tackle? Is Penning insurance? And it's going to go through practice, and because that's what happened with Bobby Hart, right? Eventually, he just outplayed Trey in practice, and he became their starter, and he played well in the game. So it's competitors welcome. I think, just be careful getting caught up in the draft status of these players. And he's a former first-round pick, and we got everybody wanted to go get Evan Neal because he was a top 10 pick for the Giants, but the guy hasn't been active on any game days. At least this guy's out there playing.
Exactly.
So kudos to Hortiz, and I'll be interested to see if they're going to try to drop him into guard. He's never played right guard. So he's played left tackle, he's played right tackle, he's played left guard. So I'm kind of curious to see what they want their approach to be there.
And you know, Money, I think when you have a good guy, a new guy come to a new place, a new facility, a new team, you're going to try a little hard. You got to realize he's going to come in and say, I got to show these guys that I'm capable of playing. I remember getting traded, playing for different teams. You go in, and you're like, hey, look, I want to go establish my dominance. I want to show guys that I can play at this level. They might have seen me from a distance, but they don't know how I actually physically go and play. So
Right.
I think that you have a guy that's going to be emotionally charged, guy that understands what's at stake. He's been traded, and he's got an opportunity to play. And his opportunity to play for a team. He was playing for a team that had no chance of getting in the playoffs. You're playing for a team that's heading to the playoffs. It looked like going to be in the playoffs. So how motivated are you? You see bad teams, they quit. Guys pack up. When there's a lot of guys on the Saints saying, okay, I'm out of here next year. Guys are like, hey, I don't really want to play. They're like, I'm not going to make that tackle. I got to stay healthy. I'm a free agent next year. There's so many things that you have to count in the play in the cards when you're out of it. When you're in it, like the Chargers, you just have a little bit more added incentive, just a little bit more juice, and you see that every Sunday.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of double back on the where's he going to play, Foster Sarell, he had 39 dropbacks. Sarell played the whole game along with Bozeman and Zion, and 6 pressures, 5 hurries, and a sack. Like that's a really tough go, and that's not Jeffrey Simmons. That's it's Devondre and it's Sebastian Joseph Day. I mean, that's
Just
not Cam
guys.
Hayward and stuff.
No.
So
Right.
that's why, in his presser on Monday, coach talked about, Becton's going to practice this week. And, I listen, I'm never going to, you can do it low. I can't, but I got to believe they're going to be leaning on him and saying, come on, man, we got to figure this out. What can we do to help you get out there? Cause he's not playing entire games. I think he's only played 1 full game. Like he gets out there and all of a sudden you see him just kind of walking to the sideline and getting out of there.
His hand, his toe, his knee. What is it? And it's tough. And everyone's hurt. It's different between being hurt and being injured. And you heard, the Giants, the great,
Carl Banks.
outside linebacker, Carl Banks, call someone out and be like, hey, look, we expect more out of you than that. And that's because they do. And don't think that front office didn't enjoy that. Don't think that there's guys in that room and guys on that team that felt the same way that Carl Banks felt. And that's why he said it. So when you usually hear certain players or certain guys with elk that's been in that game and played it at a level, you can't just be any guy, but a guy that played at that level, he's speaking from experience and he's speaking from what he sees. And he calls a guy that watches tape and says, okay, you're not getting it done. So it's just going to be interesting to see how the Chargers can motivate and say, hey, look, you got to push through these things, not question your manhood, not question who you are, but we need your athletic ability. You make us better. We brought you here to play. And guys have fought through it. Khalil Mack fighting through an elbow. You saw guys going out there injured, Derwin James, but they go out and they fight through it. And not saying that Becton won't, but he's got to find a way to suck it up and got to play. You need this guy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for people that are talking about the signing, look, when Becton is healthy, he is a freak of freaks. You were talking about Carl Banks and like Dexter Lawrence, and I think that's maybe part of it, right? Like Dexter Lawrence is such a freak that you have these incredible expectations of him. Like, hey, man, not that I'm disagreeing with Carl, I would never do that, but you want to give me every one of Dexter Lawrence's snaps and I'll drop that on the Chargers deal in this season. I'll take that every day and twice on Sunday, man. I got no problem with what he's doing this year. But in the case of Becton, it's just availability, right? The best ability is availability.
Right.
And when he is available, like I was talking to somebody, I was talking to someone and whatever, I'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
And they put it best. They're like, listen, when this guy is healthy and engaged, you're talking about someone that should be inducted into the Hall of Fame while he's still playing. Like that's how crazy it is. That's just the cheat code that this dude is, how athletic, how he moves, the strength he has in his body, the size. I mean, it is different. It's game changing what he can do in the run game. And, and it's a bummer that he's not been healthy this year. Like I said, 52% of the snaps. And if he's out there instead of Foster Sarell, who again, had a pass blocking efficiency rate of 91, which is incredibly low. I don't want to go through the numbers and what, but basically like 98 and above, you're feeling really good about it. When you get into like that
Right.
98.5, you're talking about elite, that sort of level. And he's at 91. Like that's sort of like, oh, it's a backup who was in there for 3 or 4 snaps and he gave up a pressure is kind of what a 91 looks like. So I think that's sort of what we're getting at, of how you can maybe figure this thing out to piece together 4 more wins over your final 8 games and get this thing into the postseason and hope if Amari and Hampton is back and the way Justin Herbert's been playing this season at a Pro Bowl level, if the defense has found itself, that you can maybe, make a run in the tournament because you got 10 back there and maybe you've got a defense that started to find itself.
Yeah, you can compete definitely on defense, and 10 and give you any chance. 10 is,
Right.
He's Josh Allen. I mean, you know what I mean? He can throw the ball, he can move, he can run people over. He's big, he's physical. You saw what he did on that friggin' right before halftime. He said, all right, let me take off and get 20, 30, 40 yards, that long scamper that he did just to get in field goal range. So you got 10, you got a fighting chance. But you have a better fighting chance with 10 upright. You got a better fighting chance when 10 has Becton out there who's got great feet, like you alluded to. It's a big man that can move people, big man that can recover, and he's got a great punch. He's so long and he can move. When he punches guys, he stones them. He is a dominant run player, run blocker, and pass blocker. He's just big, long. He can hit you with one off the off arm and just hold. He's got great balance, like you said. The offensive line collectively is better. Herbert, that's one less thing that Herbert has to worry about. And you need your superstar protected. So Becton understands what he means to Herbert and the success of this team. So hopefully he can get him back because, like you said, if you got 10, the way that Gaston and the way that, the receivers and the young fellas are playing, catching the ball, McConkey, you have a chance to do some very big time damage. And just unfortunately, the offensive line is the Achilles heel right now.
Yeah, I mean, basically you felt really good about the tackles, and it's like, man, if we could just shore up this interior, and it looked good through those first 3 weeks, until now the Broncos game got them a little bit there. But I think now you're talking about tough on the tackles, tough on, the interior. Like it's just, where do you go? Where's my escape?
It's too many holes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting pressure and when those quick pressures over the center, over the guard that are in your lap, the second you get the ball, there's just nothing you can do with it, And again, if your tackles now aren't Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt on one side and, your other tackle getting help from Tucker Fisk or Will Dissly, whomever it may be, that really makes it tough. And you really got to figure out, especially if you're not able to run the ball. And that's where Penning can come in because he's a big dude. He's a physical guy. He's a nasty. It's got a nasty streak. So I think it's not just about pressures. It's kind of about run blocking. And can you put him in there where you can keep this run game alive? Last week, Kamani didn't quite, do what we saw the week before against Minnesota, but Jared Patterson ran the ball really well. I thought he ran with really good physicality. The pass pro was the struggle for Patterson. And I think that's what's going to limit his carries. But last week, he ran the ball for 5 yards per, had a nice first down run, like a 10-yard run in there as well. So I'm sure they made some calls. I think the word was that they wanted a third for Breece Hall. That's tough on a running back, a day 2 pick for a running back, that you got Omari and Hampton, a first-round pick that you expect to be your bell cow. That's just, Breece is probably just going to be a rental. Like that's a lot of equity to give up. For me, in 2026, my blueprint is trade out of the first round, or trade back in the first round, get another day 2 pick. If you can get 4, day 2 picks, like that's my vision. If you either get your 1 and an extra pick on day 2, let's say if you can get 4 picks on the first 2 days, to me in the first, second, and third round, if you can get that extra pick in there and use 3 of them on O linemen, that just to me is it's such a glaring. Now that they have Oweh, Thule, I know they're both going to be up for contract extensions, but I expect them. They're humming now, man. That when you got Thule inside of Khalil Mack and Oweh at that edge, man, it is a fun front to watch.
It's
right.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. So to me, like I thought edge might be something that they would have to invest in the first round, but now I look at it, I'm like, nah, I think if you can afford, Thule and Oweh and Khalil maybe comes back for one more year, like that to me is, you're good, man. You're
Yeah, I do.
good. Caldwell looks great on the interior. They've been able to find these guys like Naquan Jones and Poona Ford last year and Deshaun Ham this year where they can kind of get that right. So I know I'm kind of rambling here, but like that's what I'm thinking about. Do I really want to trade a third rounder when I just can visualize center guard? That kind of stuff. And that's where you get those guys in that second and third round.
Without a doubt, the draft capital, without a doubt, in 2026 is going to be an interior line. You got to get better offensively. This is the only thing that's stopping you from holding up that Vince Lombardi trophy. Let's be real about this. If you look at defense, continue to build, you look at the secondary, you think about the receivers that you have now, that the core is there. You look at Gaston, you can go 12 personnel. You got running tight ends, you got blocking tight ends. You have a team right now that is ready. You lost if you had these two tackles, these all-pro tackles, and Becton was playing. I don't know if you couldn't say, I don't know if you could say that the Chargers would probably be one of the better teams, if not the top 2 or 3 teams in the AFC, hands down, if they were all healthy. So they're not. So what do? You got to build. You got to make sure you don't give away a third-round pick. You got to make sure, hey, if you use that for an offensive lineman, you have to get your team more better backups in next year in the draft, because you know what Herbert can do, number 10 can do for you. And you're talking about just, hey, addressing the offensive line and, go 12 personnel and they put fists in the backfield, all the things they're doing. You even see guys coming in motion and they're stopping at the A gap because they know that the guard needs help. So, but by doing that, now you got 2-man routes. Now guys are getting doubled. So everyone says, well, keep guy ends and do those things. But you take away, now you have to win with only 2. And you're playing one hand behind your back. So I think the fans have to realize, I understand you can go 12 or put an extra lineman in or put another big body tight end to block, but you're losing a receiver downfield and you're limiting Herbert. So that's why it is imperative that they get better up front.
Yeah. And look, you mentioned, you made a great point. It's like when you think about just sort of moving forward, and again, not writing off the season, I with 10, anything's possible. And if the defense gets back to the level it was at last year, to me, even without the tackles, there's still, because of the playmaking of Arondé Gadsden and Ladd McConkey, and if Amarian Hampton's coming back after the bye, that's what Coach Harbaugh said, that he can see, that it's not going to be before the bye. And so if that's the case, and if he's back, then yeah, I think you still got enough. You still have enough. But moving forward, do you want to give up a third when this year's third was, when third round picks in the past have been, just look at Jamari Caldwell. He is, with T.R. Tart, the anchors of the interior, defensive line. So like that's that. And I'm trying to remember, it was, we had Ladd in the second, we had Alt in the first. I'm trying to think of who the third was, because Aboigbe was the that
was third round in the win.
Deion Henley. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, there you go. So that's those day 2 picks, those are guys you expect to be starters.
Right.
Maybe not year 1, they're rotation players year 1, but by year 2, you expect a day 2 pick to be a starter. And I think if you have that offensive line that's right, let's just say that Alt is still out there and Becton has been healthy all year, then I think it's like, okay, we got to get an explosive back until Amarian gets back so we can keep this offense balanced. That's when you trade a third rounder for Breece Hall, because your offense is humming and your guy's not coming back till week 12, week 13. So that I get. But in this case, to me, you get rid of a 2027 7th round pick for Trevor Penning. Great. Take the fly. And that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get a guy that's been an elite starter, all year long. It's someone who's been a bit of a, that's had some issues with the team, and they're probably going to move on from him because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. And that's going to be that. So I credit him for finding something. Let's see how it works out. Like I said, with Bobby Hart, it worked out great. I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to get to from the Titans game, Low?
I think the biggest thing, like I always say, offense counts as a third, defense counts as a third, and special teams counts as a third. If this team, like you just alluded to, do you have a chance? Yes, you still have a chance. Yes, you can beat anybody on any given Sunday, but you can't beat them if you give up big plays on special teams, because that's going to be the calling card. If this team, it can keep teams under 21, you are going to be in every single game. It's a reason why the Niners, with so many injuries, but their defense, and they lost Bosa, they've lost Fred Warner, but look what their defense is doing. If you keep them under 21, you have a fighting chance. That's what people realize. Offense entertains, but defense wins championships. Yeah. And that's what Herbert can do. But don't try to say if the team scores 24, 28, 30, it's hard for this offense because of the fact you're limited up front. If we're going to get in the playoffs and you're going to make some noise this year, you got to button up your special teams. You can't have punt returns, run back to the house for me. You can't allow these type of plays because there's self-inflicted wounds, and it's too hard for your offense to capitalize when you're playing complementary football, because that's what this Charger team has to do. It's complementary football and it's field position and great special teams. If that's the track that they have to play now because of the hand that they're dealt.
Yeah, remember it bit them against the Colts as well. They come firing out of the half, they get that touchdown, and bang, you get that monster return on the kickoff. A lot of people have been asking me about Josh Taylor, and I don't have an answer for it. I don't know. He's been the team's #1 gunner for the last few years. He's had a bunch of special teams tackles this year. Not quite sure sort of what went into the decision of moving him to the Jets for a 2028, I think it was, 7th round pick. The only thing I can think of, speculating, having not talked to anybody about it privately, because obviously publicly they're just going to say we love John, he was great, we wish him nothing but the best, is just that Dean Leonard's healthy, and he was kind of that other gunner who was opposite John. I think you could say they were 1 and 1A, and so maybe they just feel like, hey, we kind of like Dean better, we're going to drop him out there, and that's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise it's like, what do you need a 2028 first round pick for? Unless you had to, because it's not like his cap number was big. He's still on his rookie deal, and he was a 6th or a 7th round pick anyway. So not quite sure what went into that decision to move him out, to bring in, unless, they were just trying to figure out what's the makeup of the roster, who are we going to get off this 53-man to bring in Trevor Penning. And maybe that's just kind of that's maybe just the latter.
What you're saying, the numbers game, like just what you talked about. Sometimes you got to figure it out, and with all these injuries, when people get injured and you got to bring another guy in, you got to create space. And unfortunately, they got to say, okay, instead of cutting this guy or cutting someone that's bored, let me see if I can trade. Let me get on the phone and see if I can get a trade capital. We talk about how this team loves to build through the draft. At least you're saying, okay, I got rid of a player, but now I've picked up another draft pick for next year. So, draft picks that's gold. That's if draft capital is always gold. So this team, I want to see them beat the Steelers. I think that it, and it's tough because is it going to be a home game? And how the Steelers fans travel, and that's and I know it's like, okay, God, you're playing at home, but down in SoFi when we used to play down in San Diego, we played them money. The Steelers had more fans than us, and that's in San Diego. So they travel well. So you got to make sure that, hey, you're buttoned up. Yes, you're at home, but if you let these Steeler crowd, these fan base get going, they can take over the crowd. So it's important. It's imperative that this players don't sell your tickets, to sell them, to make sure it's a Charger fans in that place, because every bit of the fans, I'm telling you, they help you so much sometimes in big games.
Yeah, look, we just saw it on Sunday. There were more Charger fans than there were Titan fans at Nissan Stadium. I'm not embellishing. I'm not exaggerating. There absolutely were more Charger fans there. And look, the Titans are 1 and 7. It's always been a destination. For whatever reason, the Chargers are the only team that has to wear it. The Raiders games are regularly attended by more opposing fans than Raider fans. And that's supposed to be, one of the best brands in all of football. But Vegas is a destination. Opposing fans will pay a premium for those seats because they want to go to Vegas for the weekend and watch their favorite team play. Same thing in Nashville. It's a great town. It's a destination for tourists. And if you're going to circle one spot that the Chargers were traveling this year, it was probably going to be Nashville, because it's Halloween. So of course there were a ton of Charger fans. I ran into so many on Broadway that were talking about the podcast. I'm not I'd say I was down on Broadway for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah. And I'd say I bumped into at least 15, probably 15 different people that stopped me and talked about how much they love Bleav in Chargers and you and Lowe. And I watch it every week. And so there were a ton of Charger fans out there, but I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh, yeah. just there's
It's
going to be a lot of Steeler fans there because it's Los
right,
Angeles and people
right,
want to come to LA and they want to
right.
spend a weekend out here and enjoy everything we have to, especially in November. If you're from Pittsburgh, let's get out there and let's hang out. And so like you said, Lo, just shut them up.
Right.
Just make them sit on their hands because that's what the Titans did on that pick six. The second play on offer, the first play on offense being a pick six, like, yeah, that's what happened. And the Charger fans were like, OS, now what? And then Herbert brought him back to life and played an exceptional game after that throw. The one other thing to take out of that Titans game, Lo, is just we're really starting to see that sneak. We're starting to see, those short yardage and Herbert really embrace it. And Trey Harris, man, I love him. I love this rookie. He's the main guy right behind Herbert that's shoving him into that line along with Matlock that's getting those extra couple inches that you need. Trey had an incredible catch, too, on that final drive when they were running out the clock, when he extended for that first down, using his leverage on top of the defender to get that first down. It's so funny, man. And I don't want you to take offense to this, Lo, but, you can just see it's like, yeah, that's a former quarterback. He sees the game and he plays the game like a quarterback. You see the way he runs his routes, how he's always coming back to get the ball, the way he gets those extra yards, how hard he blocks when asked to block, when he's kept in. And, for those that don't know, Trey was Malik Neighbors' quarterback when he was in high school. Those two guys were high school and he was Jackson Dart's favorite target at Ole Miss. So the Giants are like, can we get this guy? Can they? I know the Giants were desperate to try to get their hands on him because he's Jackson Dart's favorite receiver he's ever played with, and he was Malik Neighbors' quarterback in high school. So that's the level of athlete we're talking about and the respect that he has from his peers. And he actually, just for those that don't know the story, I'll tell it real quick.
Please.
So Trey was an exceptional basketball player. He was like a D1 level basketball player and was getting scouted and recruited. And so he decided, like, you know what? I think basketball's where I'm going to make it. So I'm going to stop playing football. And Neighbors, basically, Malik came to his house and he begged him. He's like, look, we can win the state title this year, but we cannot win if you're not our quarterback. You have got to, I get it, man. You want to, they're coming after you because he wasn't getting scouted or recruited as a quarterback. And so he's like, you've got to come back. And so he ends up coming back. And yeah, I don't think they won the state title. I think they made the state finals.
Wow.
And then he got recruited by La Tech to be a receiver. And that's, as opposed to a quarterback. So he ends up going to La Tech for 2 years and then transfers to Ole Miss after putting up big numbers for the Bulldogs. But that's he's just such a
great story.
He's a great dude, man. He's a smart dude. He's a great guy. He fights his ass off.
He fights. He works hard. You watch him in and out of his routes. He's getting to the boom, getting his shoulders square. You see him fighting for balls, getting out there blocking. And I love you got the Chargers tush push that's working. Herbert gets underneath now, and it's pretty much like watching Bill. It looks automatic watching them and just move the towel. So they're getting those little things ironed out, which is great. But yeah, kudos to Trey, man. He's getting on the field more. He's blocking hard. He's doing all the little things well.
Yeah, I think here, do I have just a week? Yeah, I have week 9 pulled up. So let me just kind of look at the snap count because you're starting to see it already, man. You're seeing Trey. Let's see, where is he? Trey Harris, 30 snaps. Keenan 24. He's out snapping. Q had 44. Ladd had 45, and then next in line was Trey with 30, and Keenan was down to 24. So I think you're starting to see him take over that third receiver role. And a lot of it is rundowns, stuff that Keenan was so good at earlier in his career as a blocking wide receiver. And I think it is, at this particular point in his career, they're like, hey, man, we appreciate you, but we don't need you out there busting your head up against these guys, against these corners and these safeties to block, or even linebackers in some cases. Just kind of take those plays off. And Trey's been so good, man. So that was sort of my big takeaway. And obviously, I know we're a few days past it, but just the idea that Deion went out there and played, and just to kind of see the way his teammates and the coaches, rallied around him. Lo, you can speak to, football being a family and being an extended part of your family when you're dealing, with just a horrible situation like he was.
He was, and just going out there, especially losing a loved one and still going out and saying, I have an obligation to my brothers here too. And it's tough. And of course, he's got to have time to grieve, and he's probably grieving doing it after the game. But kudos to him going out there and playing, and the way the team just embraced him. You heard guys after the interview, the post game, and they mentioned him. just mentioned how they were pulling for him and praying for him, and was so proud of him to go out there and do what he did. So, yeah, it's got to be tough, but he did a great job.
All right, so again, it's Steelers coming into town. We'll see what that offensive line looks like. If it's Trevor Penning at right guard, I certainly hope it's Mekhi Becton. That would be a huge boost for this team. Sawyer, Pipkins, Penning, I think, will be in the mix at tackle as well. Would love to see Branson Taylor. You know, we're now in week 9, and I know they were certainly excited about him when they drafted him in the 6th round. Felt like he could have been a day 2 pick if he hadn't gotten hurt at Pitt. But they're going to need it. You know, now that they're down another tackle, I don't know if Austin Deculus is going to be back this week, but obviously he was someone they were comfortable putting out there at left tackle. And like you said, Lo, you can only play 12 and 22 so much. Trying to get Herbert some options out there in the pattern, as opposed to just, you know, Ladd and Q or Ladd and Trey or Ladd and Keenan, and these guys are getting doubled and they're still getting pressures, you know, because you just can't double team everybody on that defensive line. And it's going to be a load. It's going to be a lot to handle with the Steelers coming to town. But again, I think this, you know, recency bias perhaps has crept in a little bit to these Steelers, because it's a Steelers team that prior to last week beating the Colts was reeling. They had given up 35 to the Packers, 33. Joe Flacco absolutely torched that defense, and for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chase Brown ran for 10 yards per carry, 11 for 108. 2 weeks ago, you know, and then you look at the Packers the following week, and obviously that's a team that's one of the favorites to win the NFC, and Jordan Love carved them up for 360 and 3 touchdowns. Tucker Kraft had 143 and 2 tugs. So just imagine what Oronde Gadsden might be able to do. So was it a 1 week anomaly in what they were able to do against the Colts? Are there things to be exploited? I would say there's enough on tape, you know, through their 8 games that suggest, yeah, you can get after them. They got the Colts. Daniel Jones, 3 interceptions. You know, Herbert might throw you 1, but you're talking about, of his, I think he's got 7 now. Of those interceptions, I think 4 of them, maybe 5, I think 4 are off tipped balls. You know, 1 bounced off a helmet. Grover Stewart's popped straight up in the air. So like I don't think that's not the level that Herbert's at. Yeah, the interception totals have more than doubled from last year, but he's not out there all throwing some bad passes all over the place. The pick 6 was rough. He just locked in, and Cody Barton read his eyes and took it out to the house. But I don't see him giving the Steelers defense 3 interceptions. So
nor do I. And I just think that, you know, when he has to, for much is required, much is received. You know, when much is received, much is given. You got to realize he has to do so much, Herbert, at times, because of the fact you don't have your offensive line, because of the fact you're not running the ball as well as you can, because of the fact there's holes. So he's back there running for his life, scrambling, throwing across the body, throwing to the other side of the field. That play that he threw to Keenan 30 yards down the field, he's rolling to his right and throws it all the way to the left side of the field, because he's running. So I understand when those interceptions can happen because of the fact sometimes he's not in a good position to deliver the pass that he wants to. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting just to see this game. I think Hayward, I think he's still one of the great nose guards, but you can get him to run, and that's what you have to do. He can't run as fast. He's not moving as fast. So you got to run to get to the perimeter, and now you make him move. You wear him out. I think that's one of the game plans. You'll see this team try to get to the perimeter and run right there and try to double team him at times, because he is slowing down, but he's still a physical guy. So this is a game you need to win. You need to keep this thing going because you want to keep pace with the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and as I just wrap it, Lo, I'm looking at, I mean, you're talking about 6 turnovers, you know, 3 picks, and they lost 3 fumbles, and they still lost this game 27-20, you know, with 6 turnovers. And it was 27-20, and Daniel Jones threw for 342 yards. So it's a lot of names, and I'm not saying that it's not going to be hard. It is. That front is legitimate, and you know, Herbig is a force. Benton is a force. Same with, you know, like you said, Cam Hayward. I can go through the name salad and toss it all together, and it's T.J. Watt and it's Highsmith and all of that, but it's a team that's allowed the last 3 quarterbacks that faced them to throw for over 300 yards. So, and I got faith in these weapons and the way that McConkey's come on, where Trey Harris is going. Oronde Gadsden's turning into one of the best pass-catching tight ends in football already. So, still got some hope. You're going to have to stay balanced. find those running lanes, and I'm anxious to see how they use Trevor Penning. I think that's kind of about, and maybe that's why FanDuel has them as a 3-point favorite. That it's a team whose defense looks like it's coming on a little bit. And let's see Cam Hart and DK Metcalf freaking get after each other. Use that physicality of Cam Hart because you're going to need it.
Right.
And see if we can get this win. You get to 7-3 and you feel really good right now. Like we said, minus 200 to make the playoffs, but you get to 7-3 and you're like, all right, we got to just go 3-4 down the stretch, and you're in. 10 wins going to get you in. So
let's go, baby. Let's go both up. Get this win. Get to 7-3. 7-3 and a little bye. Everyone's happy.
Exactly right. 7-3. Head to Jacksonville. Come back, get your bye, and hey, maybe 8-3. Let's get crazy, man. And keep those posts going, man. Lorenzo Neal, Hall of Fame. Keep those posts going. Put the pressure on those Hall of Fame voters, those lunkheads, and get this man into the Hall already. Lo, appreciate it. Always enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. Leave those comments. We love going through the comments on YouTube, and appreciate the podcast reviews and all of the stars and the reviews there. It helps us grow this thing, and it's growing darn well. And let's keep these Chargers moving, man. Moving toward those 10 wins, 11 wins, and getting into the postseason and bolt up.
Bolt up.